So yes, my name is Eric Johnson. I'm a senior research fish biologist with the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, and today I'm going to give a presentation where we evaluated some of the reintroduction strategies to try to maximize the number of adults returning back to the central Idaho Salmon Basin. So I have a pretty nasty cold, so bear with me today through this. Okay, so here's a map of the study area. So we've basically got two different sockeye stocks which enter the Columbia River primarily in June and mid-July. The upper mid-Columbia River stocks, which are destined for the Okanagan and Wenatchee Ranges in north central Washington. And then you have the Snake River stock, which migrates up the Snake River and then follows the Salmon River up into central Idaho into the Stanley River Basin or the Sawtooth Basin. So the Snake River sockeye salmon are ecologically unique in that they have the furthest migration, freshwater migration from the ocean. So they travel about 900 miles from the Pacific Ocean to central Idaho. They travel to the highest elevation, about 7,500 feet, and they're the southernmost extent of the sockeye population. So this is a map of showing the lakes in the Sawtooth Basin, and Snake River sockeye were once indigenous to 5 lakes in the Sockeye or in the Sawtooth Basin: Stanley Lake, Redfish Lake, Yellow Belly, Pettit Lake, and Alturas Lake. But as of today, sockeye are only found in 3 of these lakes, with Redfish Lake being the primary destination for most of the naturalist returns. So this is a aerial photograph showing these 3 nursery lakes. Redfish Lake, which, like I said earlier, is the primary destination for most of the naturalist returns, is the largest lake. It's about 615 hectares. And Pettit Lake is the smallest lake at about 160 hectares. So these lakes are covered in ice and snow from about November through usually the end of April or the first part of May. These lakes are nestled way up in the upper Salmon River drainage, so they're fairly pristine. They haven't changed a whole lot over the last century compared to a lot of the other migration corridors. These lakes are considered very oligotrophic. They tend to have fairly stable medium to low densities of zooplankton and phytoplankton. So just to give a little bit of history of returns of Snake River sockeye back to the Sawtooth Basin. So a weir was built in the early 1950s downstream of Redfish Lake. So we have counts from 1954. And in the mid to late 1950s, we saw returns to the Sawtooth Valley, Sawtooth Basin that ranged anywhere from a few hundred fish to sometimes several thousand fish. In the early mid-60s, you see this decline in the number of naturalist fish returning back to the basin. We don't have any count data from 1967 through 1964, but we again continued counting fish beginning in 1985. So between 1985 and 1989, we only observed 62 adults return back to the basin, and in 1990, we didn't observe any fish made it back in Stanley and Sawtooth Basin. So these low returns prompted the Shoshone Bannock Drive in 1990 to petition to list the Snake River sockeye salmon. And just a year later, in November 1991, NIMS concluded that the Snake River sockeye salmon met the criteria for ESU. This population was then listed as endangered. So the initial goal after listing was to simply just avoid population extinction. And this was done by collecting some of the last founders that Dan had talked about, juveniles, outmigrants, and some of the naturalist returns. And we were successful at maintaining and propagating this population in captivity, which we were successful at avoiding population extinction, but also conserving the remaining genetic population genetic diversity. So for the long-term goals of the program was to rebuild the population. And you can see there's a collaboration amongst a lot of different state, federal agencies, power planning, council, administrations, to look at a lot of different components of the restoration. And these range from looking at everything from lake fertilization to limnology, conservation genetics, predator-prey dynamics, and establishing best management practices. So one of these best management practices was to try to determine the best strategy or the best way to utilize these surplus eggs once our captive broodstock needs were met to yield the highest number of adult returns. And so progeny eggs and progeny from the captive fish were released in three of the nursery lakes using 3 different release strategies: the egg box strategy, pre-smolt, ultimate smolt. And we wanted to see which one of these strategies yielded the most adult returns. But at the same time, we also didn't want to put all of our eggs essentially in one basket, so we wanted to kind of spread the risk out. So the egg plants involve fertilizing the eggs in the fish hatchery and keeping them at the hatchery until the eyed egg or the eyed stage of development. These eggs were then transferred into these incubation boxes that were placed along the shore of the lakes, anywhere from about 1.5 meters to about 7 meters deep. These were planted in November, and primarily Alturas and Petal Lake. There's only 2 years where these egg boxes were planted in Outer Fish Lake. Another strategy involved rearing the fish from egg to basically par flight stage. And these fish were directly planted into the nursery lakes either in July and August as part of the summer release group, or in October as part of a fall release group. We also had a smaller group of fish that were reared in net pens at Red Fish Lake that were kept there for about 3 or 4 months before they were released. But for the purpose of the study, I've grouped all of these release groups into one par release group category. And the last reintroduction strategy, or release strategy, involved raising these fish from egg all the way to smolt. So they had no resident time within these nursery lakes. These fish were then trucked up to the Stanley, the Sawtooth Basin, and released just downstream of these nursery lakes or in the springs at Freshet. And so these fish that were raised to smolts were reared at primarily two hatcheries: the Oxbow Fish Hatchery, which is in the lower Columbia River Gorge, about 60 miles east of Portland, and the Sawtooth Fish Hatchery, which is in the Sawtooth Basin, probably within 2 miles of Red Fish Lake. So this figure here is showing the history of the release strategies over the past 25, 26 years. And as Dan mentioned earlier, early on in the program, these releases were really dominated by the eyed plants and the hatchery pre-smolt releases. Once we started seeing some adults returning, we kind of had to shift from the eyed plants and hatchery pre-smolts to this planting more full-term smolts. And over the past 4 years, we've exclusively planted only for full-term smolt releases. So in 2016, we released over 600,000 full-term smolts, and I think we're on target this year to release over 700,000 with the goal of releasing 1 million smolts in the next year or two. The results I'm going to talk about for this study are for brood years 2004 through year 2012, since it shows a pretty decent representation of the different release strategies. And we also have quite a few adults returning during these brood years. So we have some data to quantify which of these release strategies ended up being most successful. So before going into the results, just want to give a brief outline. First, I'll talk about the early life stage survival. So essentially the survival from egg to smolt. Then I'll talk a little bit about some of the intermediate later life stage survival. So the survival from the time the fish leave the lake to smolts. until they return back to the basin as adults. And then I'll try to tie these two survivals into, what does this mean in terms of the number of adults that come back per X amount of eggs, or the number of recruits per female. So this is the results of some of our early freshwater survival. So for the egg boxes release group, we saw egg to fry survival that was right around 91%. It ranged anywhere from about 50% to almost 100%. And we believe this year where we only got 50% survival, some of these egg boxes were probably planted a little bit too shallow and they're susceptible to being frozen. Our egg to smolt survival estimate averaged across the brood years for pre-smolt releases, about 26% for pre-smolt, 81% for sawtooth hatchery reared smolts, and 93% for oxbow root smolts. And just as a comparison, it came up with an estimate of 2% survival for average survival from egg to smolt for a natural population in Redfish Lake. So moving on to some of the later life stage survival. So the survival from the fish as they exit these nursery lakes until they return as adults. For the pre-smolt release group, we saw an average survival of about 0.18%. Survival for our Redfish Lake natural spawning fish was about 1.1%. Survival for the sawtooth hatchery fish was 0.2%, similar to the pre-smolt release group. And for the oxbow fish, we saw an SAR of about 0.5%. One thing I'd like to point out is this difference that we noticed between the SAR, between the sawtooth hatchery and the oxbow release group. And I think this is probably due to fish size. So these oxbow fish are raised in the lower Columbia River. It's a little more mild climate, have longer growing seasons, and subsequently they're a little bit larger fish at release compared to the sawtooth hatchery group. So now combining these two different life stage survivals, we can kind of get an idea of what the most successful strategy was in terms of how many adults do we get back per 1,000 eggs. And you can really visually see now that for this oxbow hatchery release group, we're starting to get anywhere from 3 to like 10 fish back per 1,000 eggs, which is substantially more than any of the other release strategies or the sawtooth hatchery fish. So for sawtooth, we saw about, on average, about 1.5 fish returning per 1,000 eggs. And then for the other release groups, including our natural population, we're seeing less than a half of the fish coming back per 1,000 eggs. So to make this a little bit more useful for fish managers, people that are interested in population growth, we can convert this y-axis from adults coming back per 1,000 eggs to the number of recruits per female, give an average fecundity of females from these different release groups. And I put a line in here at 2 recruits per female because that's theoretically the number of fish that you need to have come back, given a 50-50 sex ratio in order to replace your female spawners. And so we can really see here that these oxbow hatchery groups consistently, across all brood years except 2009, where we had a mortality event down at the hatchery, these fish are exceeding the replacement line in terms of recruits per female. Sawtooth release group did the next best. They exceeded this replacement line 4 out of the 9 years. But these pre-smolt releases, the egg releases, and Redfish Lake natural production fish consistently fall below this replacement line across all these different brood years. So in conclusion, we observed the smolts were the most successful release strategy, particularly those larger oxbow fish. I'd like to point out these anadromous releasing naturalist adults back into the lake continue to be important for our recovery, for our program, because we realize these fish have this naturalist life history that we don't want to lose. And based on some of our SAR information, these natural fish also have fitness advantages, it looks like, over some of the other populations that were, some of the other groups that were reared primarily in the hatchery. So we're going to continue to use this two-stage approach. We're going to continue to increase the number of full-term hatchery fish that we rear in the hatchery and release. In hopes of getting more adult and naturalist returns back. These adult and naturalist returns will then, once we get enough of them back, we can replace our captive brood stock. And any surplus fish will be released back into these nursery lakes to spawn on their own. So this is kind of going back to the number of adult sockeye returns to the Sockeye Basin. So I added the years after the initiation of the broodstock program. So over the past decade, we can see we've had returns that rival those of the mid to late 1950s. And a lot of this can really be attributed to the success of the captive broodstock program and the production of these full-term small release groups. So focus your attention on the bottom figure. Of the fish that have returned over the past decade, we can assign about 75% of those fish back to these full-term small release groups, followed by returns from fish that were allowed to spawn naturally, either captive or naturalist fish that were released above the weir. So with that, I'd like to, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge I'm fairly new to this program. I've been here for just a little over a year. And so this work wouldn't be possible with all the dedication of our work and colleagues from the department, several of them which are in the audience here today. So with that, hopefully if you have any real difficult questions, if I can ask.